Oftentimes, people will share their experiences with funerals or funeral-related stories with me. And I've noticed that one story that seems to repeat itself in many forms is where the family going through a hard time where they're dealing with the tragic loss of someone and they are working with a budget. They're trying to find a funeral home that will work with them with that budget. And so they'll see ads in the paper advertising a certain price for funerals, or they will call many funeral homes and ask them for their funeral price, and they're given a price. Yet by the time they get to that funeral home and they start making the arrangements, that price has doubled or sometimes even tripled because of all these hidden costs. This really irritates me because what some funeral homes are doing is an advertising technique where only part of the service is being listed in order to get you in the door. It's like if you saw an ad for a lawn service in the paper and you called them to mow the yard because they said mowing $10, and they come over and that's all they do is mow. No edging, no trimming, no nothing. No blowing the leaves of the grass, just mowing. And if you question them, they say, oh, well, the other stuff is extra, because if you saw the ad just said mowing. You see, it all comes down to technicalities. Technically, the funeral is only a small portion of the total price. The funeral itself is that 1 or more hour inside the funeral home chapel, where usually there's an ordered ceremony and someone is officiating. So really by that, it's up to the funeral home as far as how they will define a funeral. By definition, the funeral does not include the casket. It's not the transferring of the remains to the funeral home. It's not the storage fees, or even the visitation the night before. I see this with a lot of cremation ads that will say cremation, $700. Then they start adding stuff like alternative containers, outer receptacles, obtaining permit fees. They start adding items like they're just as surprised as you are, because technically a cremation is just when the body goes into the retort, the oven, and gets burned. Oh, what, you're gonna need some sort of outer receptacle to place your loved one's cremains in after the cremation process? That'd be an additional cost. We forgot to inform you about that. We only do this almost every day. The whole purpose of this misleading advertisement is to get you into the door, but most importantly, to get your recently deceased loved one in the door. You see, funeral homes believe that if they are in possession of your loved one's body, then you are less likely to go somewhere else, which is true for the most part. Haven't you been through enough? Do you really want to go through the emotional stress of trying to find a funeral home that doesn't lie to you? Of course not. Just stay here. You're already here, and just take these additional fees like a champ. So, how do you avoid this misleading turmoil? Have someone that is maybe a friend or a distant family member make calls for you. Someone who is not in so much grief that they cannot think clearly. Get a piece of paper and pen and write down all that's included when you talk to funeral homes. That way you can compare notes. Remember to be very specific. Start with the beginning, meaning, is there a fee for picking up the body? And is there a fee to transport that body back to the funeral home before they begin the embalming process? Does this package include embalming? What's the extra cost if the body had been autopsied? What is the cutoff time for how long the funeral home will hold the body before they start adding storage fees? How much time do we get for visitation? What do the caskets start out as, meaning their starting price? Are they cloth-covered wood? Are they metal, copper, etc.? What about the use of the hearse or the transportation in the procession from the chapel to the cemetery? What about all the small overlooked items like the funeral programs, the register book, and the slideshows? You want to get as much information as possible. That way you can compare notes if you're talking to multiple funeral homes and find out which one works best for your budget. This is James, the funeral director, and I hope I have shed some light into this reoccurring theme of advertisement, and I look forward to more questions, and hopefully I've answered some questions with this video. If not, you can always feel free to email me at jamesthefuneraldirector gmail.com. I look forward to your questions. Take care, everyone.